Tēnā rā koutou katoa, nau mai haere mai ki tēnei kaupapa, ko Borni te Rongopai Tukiwaho tōku ingoa, ko te Kaiārahi o te ora auaha ahau. Kia ora everybody, my name is Borni te Rongopai Tukiwaho. I am part of the Te Ora Auaha whānau, and I am here today to facilitate the first webinar of a series of 8 that we will be delivering over the next, I guess, 8 months, because we're hoping to give you something every month to be able to get your head around. Today, we're going to be talking to 3 friends. Our title of our webinar is called Creativity in a Time of Crisis. We were recently a part of a Culture, Health and Wellbeing conference, an international conference, and the 3 friends we're going to be speaking to today took their kaupapa and we're a part of the conference, the digital space. We're going to hear about their mahi, about their organisations, and they're going to give us their whakaaro. Now, first off, let's go and talk to Uncle Eynon.
Tēnā tātou. Manawa mai te Māori nuku, manawa mai te Māori rangi. Te Māori ka whakapiki, te Māori ka whakakake. Te Māori o enei tuhunga, te Māori o tēnei tauira. Te Māori ki runga, te Māori ki raro, te Māori kāputu ki te whaiao, ki te ao mārama. Pouhi wero, ko tauana mai te Māori, haumi e, hui e, tāiki e. A kuari ki te maunga ko waipapa te awa. A Ngāti pai a kau te hapu, ko te whānau apanui te iwi. Ana, ko whakatōhea anō tētahi peka, ka huri ki te arawa waka, ki Ngāti Rongopai, Ngāti Pukiao. Anō nei ki kaitahu, e karangahia nei, e mihi nei kia koutou. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Kia ora tātou. Everyone, Eynon Delamere here. Yeah, just saying I come from all over the place in New Zealand, in a bit of a mixed bag, but lovely to be here. Have a kōrero. Kia ora mai.
Atamari e Eynon, nau mai haere mai. Kia ora e hoa. So, just going to have a bit of a kōrero. There's some questions. I've got a few questions here sitting here, but we don't need to follow them. Let's just go with the flow and see what the best thing is that rolls out for us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. I think one of the first questions we want to ask is to go back to the Culture, Health and Wellbeing conference. What made you guys feel like you wanted to be a part of that kaupapa?
Pātai pai tērā, it's a good question, Borni. I guess when it comes to taonga, pūoro and healing, and actually, you know, it says culture, health and well-being, for us that's I guess how we see the world view. It's all intertwined. And I guess was always told that a gift is not a gift unless you give it on. And so no good keeping those taonga that you were passed on to you, that actually you've got to actually share it. So I guess making sure that I guess in my mind anyhow, that we actually share the word of taonga pūoro and focus on the taha wairua, taha tinana and the taha hiningaru. So yeah, koe nā noi.
Kia ora. I'm just going off something that you just said there, just tau pūoro. Can you kind of elaborate on what that is and what that means to you for anyone who's listening, please?
Well, the taonga pūoro is nature, really, is nature calling, and it's us, I guess it's us manifesting nature through instruments. So, you know, there could be instruments of tāne from the god of the forest, or as you can see in the background, instruments from the sea. So yeah, there's plenty of taonga pūoro instruments that cover a gambit of things, but it always reminds me of this whakatauki, e tio te tui, e kete te kākā, e kōrihi te kōkako. And basically it's saying it takes many instruments to make a symphony. But if we just peel that back a little bit more, what it's actually saying is there's strength in diversity. And I guess this whole conference and that whole thing, wrapping it, tying it up and together, and you know, into that strength for our, especially us at this time with the with the COVID ravaging the whole world.
Yeah, bloody anti-Rona, right? What brought you to taonga pūoro? What was it that started to steer you towards using this as part of your life?
I guess earlier on, you know, when you're a young fella with black hair, you got aspirations to be an All Black, or, you know, taonga pūoro or anything Māori wasn't on the radar. When we were growing up at school, you had Māori once a month or something. That's all you had. There was no total immersion classes, and so little things like Maurako classes and that, they were all amazing for us at those days, because we were out of touch with our taha Māori, especially at school. At home was different because, you know, the grandparents, my grandfather only spoke Māori, so you had no choice. But at school, everyone else had mince pies, and, well, we had this takako, and you sort of crave it, actually, crave mātauranga Māori, and that's how I got into it, really, was that craving. And it was Ricky and Rewi and people like Rangi Iria, who's now passed away, they all were right into it, and really I just sort of fell into it and loved it, and you just can't get away from it.
Amazing. Do you think, in regards to communicating this amazing, it's amazing form of communication, if we look at that as a form of communication, do you feel that the conference was a useful tool to be able to get get the word out, or get for people to see it?
Very difficult to answer when you're talking to a screen and you can't see people's reactions. I guess the ability to share that with people around the world using technology was an interesting factor. It's definitely hard to do it in front of a screen without some the wairua that comes from people watching when you're actually in the room together, and you bounce off that wairua, and it's difficult to do via video. But hopefully people got something out of the session. I know it was also quite late at night over there, and so all those factors, you know, my attention span is not the greatest either. So yeah, we'll see. I hope it went down well.
Yeah, I was in the room, and it was a beautiful moment. It was amazing. What do you think we can do moving forward? Because for me, when I look out into our landscape, our artistic landscape, there's not a lot of moments where I've seen this form of communication, this musicality being uplifted. Is there something you think we can do to help uplift it further?
I think it's just about sharing. And you know, mātauranga Māori is an interesting space. If we have a look at in the older days, it's probably prevalent to note that not everyone was taught this stuff, that actually certain people were selected to do certain things. Now we've come to a time where we have to share it because it'll get lost. So to me, if you can share it, you should just share it. And they're starting to teach it at schools now, especially in kura kaupapa. So it's really this. There's a second wave of these rangatahi that are coming through now that are just amazing. Amazing at playing taonga pūoro, but also understanding the whakapapa and the link to rangi and papa, and how it all weaves in together, and I guess that's the part that makes it special, really. Anyone can pick up a guitar. Well, some people can pick up a guitar and play it, but really understanding what the actual instrument can do, that's the next level. So, yeah.
What do you think the benefits of understanding? Because it's a whole world view, isn't it? This whole communication tool. what do you think of the benefits for our hauora, not just as Māori, but for us as humanity? What are the benefits that people can garner from being able to be a part of learning or watching even?
Yeah, I think taonga pūoro is about centering yourself. So when you play the instrument, whichever one it is, you become that element, whether it's tāne, whether it's tangaroa. So you're actually grounded. You bring yourself back to papa tuanuku, e orangi, and you listen. And with it, that's an art that we've lost, the art of listening. We never had any books in the old days. Every whakapapa was passed down awaha. You listened. Now we don't really listen, and we're not listening to our environment. I mean, the best thing about lockdown, if I could say that, is that the tuis came back. You know, the papa tuanuku started rejuvenating herself, and we just don't listen to papa tuanuku. We just carry on with our life, and you know, when we get down to level 2 or level 1, whichever way we're heading, we'll forget that actually you need to take time out for yourself. We'll forget that, and we'll go back to our busy lives. And how can we keep those things going, you know? And hopefully, what grounds it for me is when I get the kōauau out and just play it in. Look, by no means I'm not an expert, but definitely I think it just grounds you, and yeah, that's how I see taonga pūoro.
Amazing. For anyone who's watching, if they want to access any videos or any resources, do you have any tips for anyone who'd like to look into it a bit further?
Oh, I think you can, Uncle Google, you could search anything at the moment. It's amazing. There's plenty of resources on the internet with regards to taonga pūoro. So if you just type it in there into Google, there's a whole lot of stuff that it comes up. Too much stuff for me to mention, really. And there's a number of wānangas that go on throughout the year, especially in the summer, where taonga pūoro is the main ingredient. So I think, yeah, just keep your eyes and ears open. But if you just Google taonga pūoro, there's a lot of treasures online already.
Kia ora. Yeah, I resonate with what you were talking about around the world shifting and changing in a way that our nature is louder. I live right in the center of Tamaki Makaurau, and there's tui everywhere. And I've got this courtyard outside, and whilst we're in lockdown, I actually have to put mute on in a lot of my hui in the afternoon because the birds get so loud. It's quite amazing. It's really cool. I reckon one last question, my friend. If we're thinking about, you know, in response to COVID, you know, the world is changing constantly. There's different, there's different variants now where we're constantly having to look at what we want to do to look after ourselves without really being able to mitigate because we don't know what's happening. This world and this musicality as a tool, I think, is so uplifting. As I mentioned, I was in the room and it was incredible. Where do you think the hope is in all of this? And I mean, not just COVID, but what can we use in Te Ao Māori, in this Te Ao taonga pūoro? Where's the hope, do you think?
That's a very good question, Borni. And I don't want to steal a line from Jacinda, but there's a whakatauki that goes, he taonga rungo nui te aroha ki te tangata. And kindness towards people is the most important treasure. And I think that if we can, I don't know, when the first lockdown, I started doing a bit of walking. Now I see that's gone by the by, but I used to walk around the block, and everyone would say hello, eye contact, how's it going, morning. And what I've noticed is as soon as lockdown was over, that's all changed. People don't look at each other, their head down, still doing their walk, but no interaction. So I think that actually being one with people again, actually being a good neighbour, how many people actually know who their neighbours are? A lot of the time now, you don't know who the person is next door. And then when I was growing up, we knew everyone in the street. We blocked the street off and had a Christmas party for all the kids and things like that. You know, those little things. And I know it's just moving away from taonga pūoro a little bit, but it's actually the essence of taonga pūoro is actually being centered and pulling all that together, and pulling everyone around you together as well. So not just, okay, I'm good, that's it, close the door, actually worrying and caring about everything around you. And I think that's what taonga pūoro does to me. Like you said, when the pigeons are singing outside, you're not the only one that hears that, everyone hears that. And I guess that will give them whatever that gives them, but it definitely gives me a lot of joy. So yeah, I think that we actually just, if we start caring for people, we'll then eventually care for the planet, and that will eventually, you know, make a better place for us.
Oh, pai ana, ka rawe. Well, I think that's us for today. Thank you so much for your generosity and your wisdom. Ka mihi atu ki a koe. Thank you for being here. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe.
Kia ora. I'm Ryan. I'm one of the founders and the director of Gap Filler. So we started up in the immediate post-quake period, a bit over 10 years ago now. Broadly speaking, just doing community projects on sites where buildings had been demolished and kind of the cultural life of the city had been, but wasn't at that time. And that was very much our focus for a number of years. And from that, we've grown to a kind of broader organization, doing work all around the country and just looking at creative and memorable ways to connect people to place. And I think a lot of that at core is about helping people find themselves in the places where they live, or find themselves reflected and the things that are that matter to them reflected in the places where they live. I think that's the through line to our work. Yeah.
Kia ora Ryan, nau mai haere mai ki tēnei kaupapa. Welcome, thank you for your time. Today, I've got a few questions that are listed in front of me that I'm going to ask you. Doesn't mean we have to stick to it. Let's just see where we go. But the first question is kind of based around yourself and your organization. Is there anything else you think that everyone could know about Gap Filler? And also, could you tell us what was it about the conference, the Culture, Health and Wellbeing conference, that made you want to participate?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, the most literal answer is that Dr. Lucy Dayet was the one that invited me to be part of it, and I want to be part of anything that she's got her hands on and asked me to do. That's probably the most honest answer, but no, it's really interesting because Gap Filler started, I would say, when we started after the earthquakes. My personal recent history had been as a theater practitioner primarily. I was in art circles. One of the other key co-founders was also in art circles running residency programs and so on. And that was probably our closest point of identification was kind of arts and culture organizations and spaces and ways of thinking. And over time, we found both that we sat very uncomfortably in arts and culture because of the sort of work we were doing was too community focused, that it wasn't necessarily taken seriously as an arts or cultural practice, and that there were lots of tensions around even applying for funding and who would fund you and what criteria fit and so on. And I guess Wellbeing is the other one where, Kieran Fox from the Mental Health Foundation, he was one of our board members right from the very start. So on one level, that kind of well-being thinking was a part of our DNA from the start, even though we weren't kind of hitting it in a direct way, I'd say. But the resourcing in the health sector, especially for well-being initiatives, is shocking. So over time, we've become what gets referred to as a peacemaking organization. And most of our touchstones, points of reference, are urban design, urban planning, architecture, landscape architecture. That's kind of how we frame ourselves in order to get paid and have an impact, even though the way we think about ourselves tends to be more arts and culture and well-being. So I thought that's quite an interesting place to be in, where to kind of get invited to a culture, health, well-being conference, which to me is very much at the core of what we do, but we have to wear another coat in order to exist.
Kia ora. And tautoko, kia ora, Dr. Lucy. Hey, I'm really interested, you brought up in your kōrero there about the seen as two community. Can you expand on that a little bit? What does that mean?
I mean, any number of things. There's a big and long debate in the arts and in social practice in the arts in particular, about whether giving up a sort of artistic autonomy means that you're, possibly both betraying your politics and your arts in a way. And a lot of gap fillers' work over the years has been in some way scaffolding others to do things that are important to them, and deliberately not being the quality control kind of gatekeeper or something. And so we support and enable a lot of projects and do a lot of projects where kind of maybe aesthetic quality and things like that isn't the number one concern. And so I think that's caused some friction within art circles about how seriously to take us or not, and should we be receiving any of that pot of funding or not, and those sorts of things that you sort of sidestep by then getting involved in urban design and city master planning processes and leading engagement processes, and that sort of thing was a different way of achieving something similar, where there was maybe more openness to it.
It's an interesting balance, isn't it? For those who are watching now and who have seen the conference, they would have noticed that there were quite a few of you sitting at the table and having your kōrero. So can you tell us a bit about what that collaboration was, and did it work out for you and your rōpū, like how you hoped it would?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, something we've been asking ourselves for quite a while is, who do we want to hang out with as an organization? Who are our kind of close friends and collaborators? And there's a small group of organizations that all emerged in that post-quake Christchurch setting, who we have deliberately aligned ourselves with and also have been grouped with over the years because of our origins, because of that post-quake story, broadly operating in creative enabling space or something like that. But I found it really nice to sit around the table with people with very different sort of practices that emerged not necessarily out of the same context and whatever, but so on the surface we look so different, but the kind of kernel at the heart of it is what's shared. And that's actually a lot deeper than, oh, I'm a painter, you're a painter, wow, we're both painters, cool. Well, that's actually not the important thing. It's actually about what's, what you're trying to express through that painting, or what your process is maybe, or something. And when you find someone that shares the values in the process, even though their output might look completely different to yours, that's an immediate, nice kind of deep connection. So yeah, I think that's what we got a taste of there.
That's beautiful. There's their humanity in that, right? That's connection. You've spoken about gap filler and the connection it has to the quakes. I've just been wondering, as you've been talking, have you noticed any similarities between the quake space and the COVID space? Because recently I've been having kōrero with some friends around the idea of trauma and crisis, and it seems to me there's a similarity in there. Would you can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, in Ōtautahi, our experience of COVID has been a pretty luxurious one in a lot of respects. You know, we had a lockdown for a few weeks last year and a lockdown for a few weeks this year. And other than that, we've been fortunate enough to be able to truck on, you know, pretty much as normal apart from closed borders for a while. So, but we definitely, especially in the first lockdown last year, a lot of people were commenting, and a lot of people in our organization were commenting on the similarities where there was a kind of collective mindset and these like quite wonderful gesture, you know, the teddy bears in the windows that seemed to take the whole country by storm was the most obvious or most prominent, where there were a whole lot of people doing a lot of little things to, you know, to make that period a little bit better for everyone who was going through it. And you saw lots of, I don't know, sidewalk art and people drawing hopscotches on the footpath, or, you know, whatever it might be, those sorts of, you know, really small gestures that actually were quite moving at the time in ways. So yeah, absolutely. I feel in the post-quake period, that's absolutely what we experienced and tried to make space for. And actually one of the biggest parts of our mission as an organization really was to try to keep that space open. We knew that those gestures of communal spirit and goodwill would run out, would only last for so long after the natural disaster. And so how do we actually, you know, we knew it would be fewer people, but how do we kind of keep that up? How do we make that business as usual, not just an immediate kind of disaster response thing? And I'd say there's the same challenge here. My experience, I don't know about yours, of the more recent lockdown, where there was none of that. People were trying to pretend that it wasn't happening and it would be over in a few weeks and we'll go back to normal again, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, you've already acknowledged the difference that's happening. I think mainly with Tamaki, where we're in a further lockdown than the rest of the country this time around. So we are probably noticing slightly different responses to what you guys are, because you just went on a hike, which we
That's right.
which we're not allowed to do. I'm just wondering, looking forward or forecasting forward, you guys have been in a position where you've had to do that because of the quakes and the ongoing nature of those that have happened for you. In this space, in this kind of COVID response space, what kind of hope do you see from your perspective in your organization, or what positive steps are we able to make?
I mean, I feel like our field or discipline, so placemaking is the word that often gets used, but broadly the idea that more people, broader range of people should be allowed and encouraged to participate in various kind of civic and public space projects in a wider range of ways than normally, where you hire a small set of professionals to do that sort of thing for you if you're the councils looking at public space. And I feel like that is happening. And there's now a discourse worldwide, because the approach to public space for the last year and a half, 2 years has had to be different. And you have to be more creative, and you have to find ways not only to, you know, for that people can safely distance while having a meal and stuff like that, but also how do we rebuild people's faith and trust and interest in public space when we've been, you know, in some countries for a long time isolating in some degree or other. And so how do you rebuild social trust and stuff that fundamentally, I mean, that's the sort of stuff we've been doing all along. And so what we are seeing now is more councils, local governments are including, it's still some of these same exclusive systems with big barriers where, you know, we want to develop a new public space, so we'll put an official tender on the government tendering service website that only big companies see, and it's, you know, it leaves a lot of people out. But within that, they're writing into the brief much more community engagement and participation and placemaking and running some events before you decide what the final thing's going to be. And so that's definitely happening more and more. And I think COVID has helped that in a way. So
How to build public trust? That's a bloody good question. So we're going to start winding down now, Mr. Ryan Reynolds. Before we tie off, if anyone's interested to learn more about your ropu, what do they need to do? Where do they go to?
gapfiller.org.nz is our website, and you can find us on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn as well.
Amazing. Kia ora, Ryan. Ka mihi atu ki a koe. Thank you for your time, and hopefully I'll see you in Ōtautahi soon. Ka kite.
Ka kite. Thanks.
O tēnā tātou katoa, ngā mihi nui ki a kōtai, ka Huia O'Sullivan tōku ingoa, ko taranaki te maunga tapu. I am the Executive Director for Ngā Rangatahi Toa up here in Tāmaki Makaurau. I whakapapa to Te Aotearoa ki Taranaki, but currently reside in Sandringham. I run a small organisation that works with young people between the ages of 13 to 18, specifically in South Auckland at the moment, although we'll be stretching out to West and North Shore next year. And we work predominantly with young people to use the creative arts to build resilience and coping strategies for rangatahi. Kia ora.
Kia ora, kare, nau mai. Thanks for giving us your time today.
Sweet as.
Nice to see your beautiful smile. As we move into this kōrero, there's a few, well, you know this, the people who are watching don't, we've kind of compiled a few questions. I might go a little bit off them if something piques my interest, but we've got a little bit of a journey to do together. So once again, thank you for your time and spending with us today. First off, I just want to kind of tautoko to the conference. And I'm really interested to understand what was it about the Culture, Health and Wellbeing Conference kaupapa that made you feel that it was something that was right for your kaupapa?
Yep, I think for me, there were probably three main points as to what attracted me to that particular kaupapa. It was the opportunity to be able to work alongside and collaborate with the likes of Amber, who I've known for a number of years through mental wellbeing and also her whakaaro around resilience, and also Eynon, who for me is so steeped within tikanga Māori practices, and to be able to sit alongside and more so his mahi complement what we do, which really for me grounds it and anchors it. It was also the opportunity to look at, you know, because we often so just accept overseas research as our evidence base to inform our practice. And it was the opportunity to be able to showcase and profile our work, our Indigenous frameworks of Māori methodology and Indigenous practice to the outside world and go, this is what we're doing, this is what works really well for us, based on our own tikanga.
With that in mind, so when you mention Amber, we mean Amber Balls, right?
Yes.
So you came on board with Amber and Molly, yeah. And you just spoke about your collaboration with Eynon as well. How did those collaborations work for you? Did they work how you hoped in regards to the connection to this type of kaupapa, like the conference type, and getting your mahi heard?
Yeah, I think too, sitting in alongside Amber and Molly was, you know, that's that integrating theory with practice, but two very different concepts there of Te Ao Māori and a Western methodology, but looking at how too that there's synergies within the two, and what Molly spoke to around competitive funding models, some of the problems with funding within the arts, and actually how that actually impacts us on the ground. So for me to be able to look aside that, to go, there's some real common denominators that come through all of our kōrero, and for me it's how we look and how we focus on those kind of key points of intersectorial knowledge that we can work with, and we can grow it, nurture it, and harness it to be able to go, yeah, this is what we want to do going forward. I really respect Amber and the work that she's done over the years, and And also with Molly, it's the first time I've met and gotten to know Molly, which was awesome, and just the real hard work that gets done. And I know for Eynon, this is for him, it's everything. It's what he lives, eats, breathes. So it's always, for me, I felt like I'd done a whole year's of professional development in that one session with both Amber and Molly, and with Eynon as well. Yeah.
Ooh. Hey, I'm really interested, like you've touched on the methodologies of Te Ao Māori, and I guess the guidance of tikanga and mātauranga Māori around that space. I'm really interested if you don't mind sharing a little bit more about your thoughts on that space with us.
In terms of
what does that mean to you? What does it look like? So we're this particular kōrero, hopefully many people will watch it. For those who don't have an understanding of what that looks like, what does that mean to you? What does the methodologies within Te Ao Māori and the guidance of tikanga mean to you?
Yeah, for me, it's a way of being. It's who we are, and it's a very, very old knowledge that's I think about, I mean, I can, while we use Te Whare Tapawha, and I started to bring that into Ngā Rangatahi Toa, because when I came on board, for me, we were lacking Māori methodology, and not wanting to just jump on and take on whatever was out there, but it was like, how can I explain tools of wellbeing in a really simple way for our staff to just be able to use really well? And it wasn't just to be able to talk to it, for accreditation or registration, but it was like, this is how we actually bring Te Whare Tapawha to life. And I know that because for me, coming from Taranaki, and I was always taught through my kaiako, it's like you have your own methodologies. And for me, it was always around pariakatanga and the meaning of the three feathers. And for me, that guides my work that I do through my whole practice of social work practice, and how it makes me move in the world as a person and as a collective, as part of my hapu. And so it's always that guidance that steers me as my moral compass. And so for me, when we've talked and when we look at kind of steeped within our tikanga and Māori methodology, that's what keeps us safe. That ensures that our accountability is always back to the people that it should be, which is whānau hapu iwi. And I know we've talked previously around our KPIs to our nannies, but for me, that is the bottom line of going, I'm accountable and transparent in my practice to the nannies. And if I can't look them in the eyes and tell them that I'm looking after their mokopuna, then there's something really wrong with that. And so for me, that's always the anchor point and the guidance of Māori methodologies of practice outside of the world of academia, that keeps me real and keeps me honest, but also ensures that I'm tracking okay with whatever we're doing. Yeah.
Man, amazing. Kia ora. I really resonate with your kōrero around being responsive to what's happening at the moment, but also being responsible to be able to speak to our kaumātua and be able to represent who we are in an authentic way. Kia ora for that whakaaro. So we're in Taonaki at the moment, and we're in the midst of a lockdown still. For your mahi with your rangatahi, I'm assuming you've seen quite a few changes over the last 18 months, or less, that we've been in the lockdown. How has that affected your mahi, or has it at all anyway?
Oh yeah, it's kind of flipped it on its head, which is, for us, it's great. For us, we're always looking for the opportunities to adapt and be responsive. And for me, that's enabled us to kind of carve out our space too as a creative youth development organisation. So I guess too, at the beginning of last year, we're a really lean organisation. So we had a number of kind of things and tools set up with our young people already online. So when we went into that first level 4, we were straight online, because that's already how we engage. And for a number of other youth organisations that didn't have those modes already set up, it's like, they weren't having connection with their babies for 6 to 8 weeks when I was speaking to other people in the sector. We knew after that first lockdown, we needed to come back and bring them together to be able to connect them in quite deeply. And that's when we formed our legacy piece around the haka in that 100-day window. This time round, a lot of our families are still, reeling in the impacts of that first lockdown. So this one has been significantly harder. We've noticed there's been more suicides within our communities, which is always a concern for us. And some of those young people that were already disengaged from the school system back then due to the first lockdown, well, that's even gone further apart. That gap's grown massively, but they're still engaged with us. So that's the real positive. And so for us, we recognise our role within that to be able to work along the schools we work with, but also that we're in comms with our kids and our families. So when we look at kind of funding, people are like, oh, what schools are you working with? And we've had to be really clear. It's like we follow the young person and the family, not the school. So if the young person's going through really transitional movements in their life, then we follow the child. And that's changed the way young people are coming into our programs. Like we've got young people self-referring and reaching out to us going, man, we want to be a part of your program. Ministry of Ed recognised it at the end of last year and gave us some funding for the Aotearoa series, so over the summer holidays, when they recognised that this was the time that the young people were really coming away, even though it was the holidays, that there would be, if that thin thread was broken, there'd be no chance of them re-engaging back into a school system. So this time around, we've already planted the seed with our kids of what's going to happen once we come out of this lockdown into a level 2. So that we're planting that seed of hope that it's like, it's all right, man, we've got a plan, we've got you, and this is how we're going to wrap around you to get you back into your education and get you back on track with your NCA, because that's kind of where, not that we have a massive focus at all around NCA credits, but what we recognise is the importance of our young people kind of flourishing in life. They need numeracy and literacy, and we have a role to play within that.
Amazing. It seems to me that your mahi is necessary and really impactful. Earlier you mentioned that you're going to be branching out across Tāmaki to west and north, I think you said.
Yeah.
Will that change anything in in your approach? Do you have to shift your lens at all, or is it literally you doing the same mahi in a larger area?
Yeah, it's a bit of a what we've taken and what we've found through our evidence and our evaluations is that the last year has been amazing for us in terms of how we attract young people onto our programs. And so for us, going into west and also going into north, and when I say north shore, I'm talking like Beach Haven, Birkenhead, that side of the bridge, to be able to work with people we already engage with in those areas is the touchstone to be able to work into those communities that need it the most. And just working, for me, that's a really strong community development approach, is when you go in there on the invitation and then you let that community dress you. We're not rolling in there from our south side and going north and thinking we're the be all and end all. There's a process of respect and humility that needs to occur. So we'll be working alongside our creative artists that sit, live, breathe within those communities to be seeking advice about how best to approach those two areas. Yeah.
Cool. The approach that you have and the mahi that you do, I feel is would be slightly different and new for some of the people who are watching this particular kōrero. Is there a way for them, besides just emailing, is there a way for them to be able to learn more about how you do this, your process, and how to move forward, or what they can do to learn from the learnings that you've garnered? Is there a way to make those connections for anyone?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's about, sharing the knowledge, and through sharing knowledge, we share power. And so it's just a matter of reaching out. A lot of people will come through our Instagram because probably that's our most current and updated.
for our audience. I have a lot of teachers that will come through. You know, they'll see our highlights reel and see that we're in Wānanga and go, man, I really like, have you got that, I don't know, like tools, and I can't wait to review your tool. I'm like, oh, Kari, it's a one pager. Like, don't get too excited, you know, like around our chicken. And I'm like, yeah, sweet as, here it is, you know, and go hard. It's the simplicity of it, I guess, without complicating, of that's why it works, you know, and understanding how we developed our theory of change, which comes back to relational practice. And I think it's the time that you spend on the ground to be able to do that. And that's people like, yeah, we want to do it like, you know, and it's like, it's not about that, man. Relational practice takes time, and it's doing the groundwork, and that stuff's not always sexy, you know, that's not the cool stuff, because that's the grind actually. But it's that grind, and you know what it's like. It's like you go to a marae, man. You don't. You go and pick up a towel and you do the dishes, and that's the best thing you can do. So times like that for us are really important. Of, you know, tangihanga and that, because we understand this is how we network, and this is the significant time to not just be showing face out the front, but if you want to create impact, man, you go get in there and you do the dishes. You don't leave until it's done. You don't just turn up after lunch. You stay there till the end.
Till everyone else is asleep.
Yeah. And then you're first up. You make the porridge.
Amazing. One last question there, Kare. It's a simple one. Where is the hope, do you think?
Oh man, I reckon, I know for us the hope lies within our, it almost sounds cliche, within our rangatahi, but it's you know, it's that little spark in the eye that I see from them, and the difference that coming together and dancing can do together in the kitchen, you know, when we're on Wānanga. And I said to my nephew, and I said to him, you know, that's the stuff that counts. That's the stuff that keeps people connected, is and I think back to the NCA and the credits and how important creativity is in the school. And it's because of, for some of our young people, that's the only area where they will excel, is within the arts or within creativity. And I know for kids on our program, it's so important that they can feel that they have a place. And when people have a place, they feel connected. When they feel connected, they want to work together. And it's understanding that we all are connected. We need to ensure that we find those connectors to bring each other together. Because when I kind of look out at the moment, it's like, oh, you know, these divides starting to happen, even around some of the vaccination stuff, and kind of within our own factions. And it's like, okay, so how do we bring this back together? What do we do within our ranks, within Ngā Rangatahi Toa, to ensure that our kids always feel connected, even though we might be sitting at a very different place around a whakaaro, so that our kids are always learning that no matter what the difference, you can always come together if you work hard enough to find those points. And when you have those points, then there's hope, because the hope is that we would always want to work towards the same goal.
Aye.
Yeah.
In unity, eh? In unity.
Yeah, difference is good, you know, difference is important. We need difference. Yeah.
Tautoko. Ewa, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your amazing mahi, the amazing mahi that you do for our rangatahi. It's incredible. Tino aroha nui ki a koe. E kare?
Kia ora.
Ka kite.
Ai, matiwa.